everyone, welcome back to Educated Iron. Today we talk about bulking versus cutting. If you're watching this video, you probably already know what that means, but I'm going to explain it for those of you that don't. Bulking is a generic term we use to describe a caloric surplus diet. That caloric surplus aids in helping us build muscle because we increase the amount of ready-made energy that is free circulating in our body. That free circulating energy is actually what's going to help us sustain longer, more intense exercises, which are going to help in building muscle. Cutting is the exact inverse of this. We're decreasing the amount of calories we eat during the day so we can get rid of excess body fat that we somehow accumulated during our bulk diet. On a bulking diet, we're going to add muscle to the body, but we're also going to add some fat too. So the purpose of a cut diet is to get rid of that excess body fat we put on it. There are a lot of people out there that will look at a bulk versus cut diet and think that it's unhealthy because you're constantly adding weight and then getting rid of it. But in my opinion, I think adding weight, adding fat, and never getting rid of it is more unhealthy than constantly cycling on and off. Everyone gains body fat. It's a natural process. But most people don't understand why or how they do that. You gain body fat by being at a caloric surplus and not meeting or coming close to expending all the calories that you've taken in throughout the day. Any calories that aren't burned or expended throughout the day ultimately get stored as body fat, if they're not stored as glycogen beforehand. Now, if your glycogen stores are full, then it will be stored as body fat. The average American eats 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, and many of us don't come close to doing enough physical activity to meet that benchmark. If you're not expending all the calories that you eat in a day, and you're constantly not meeting that benchmark, you're going to continually gain body fat. We have to pay attention to our caloric intake, and not just that big number, but the little numbers that make up the big number. Fats, proteins, and carbs. We have to look at our basal metabolic rate as well. The basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories you need on a daily basis to sustain normal body function. And that's based upon your age, height, and sex. You can find this by going online and Googling a just simple BMR calculator. But keep in mind, it's only an estimation. Don't take it as an ultimatum. For any diet, we have to pay attention to our BMR. On a bulk diet, we're going to add 600 to 1,000 calories to your BMR to account for the amount of daily activity you're going to be doing to help sustain continual muscle growth. Not only will eating more calories help in building muscle, it's going to help in repairing it. A lot of people don't realize how muscle is actually built. I'll talk about that on a later video. If we're talking about me, my basal metabolic rate is about 2350. And now I add about 1,000 calories to that, so I eat roughly 3,500 calories to 4,000 calories on my bulk diet. And now you think that's a lot of food, but if you look at professional bodybuilders, professional powerlifters, they're eating close to 6,000 or more calories a day. That's a lot of food. With that being said, most of us aren't professional bodybuilders, so we have to keep a real watchful eye on the daily amount of calories we take in, because the ones you don't use are going to be stored as body fat, like I said before. We do the same thing for a cut diet, except we leave out that 600 to 1,000 extra calories that we would add on bulk. The reason we do this is because we want to either meet or expend more calories than we're taking in, so that way ultimately we're at a caloric deficit. That caloric deficit is what ultimately ends in fat loss. 1 pound of fat is actually 3,500 calories. So if we look at this over a week basis, if we're trying to burn 1 pound of fat per week, we have to burn 500 calories per day more than what we're taking in. Now, the healthy rate at which we lose body fat is 2 to 3 pounds a week. So if you look at the amount of calories you have to burn on a daily basis in order to meet that 2 to 3 pound benchmark, you're looking at 1,000 to 1,500 calories per day more than what you're taking in. And from experience, that's a lot of cardio. It's a lot of work to actually burn more than what you take in. So 500 is a great start for anyone that's trying to lose body fat. But just like on bulk, where we're looking at how many calories we take in, on cut, we need to make sure we're getting enough. A lot of people think, oh, well, if I eat less calories, I don't have to do as much cardio. In a sense, you're right, but you have to look at the amount of calories you need on a daily basis to survive. Again, look at your BMR. You have to have that number of calories in order to sustain normal body function. Just like with bulking, you have to keep an eye on how many calories you take in for cut. Not that we're taking in too much, but we're taking in too little. Remember, your BMR is that number we have to have in order to sustain normal body function. If you don't take in enough, you can start to eat away at the muscle that we worked so hard to achieve. So, hopefully now we understand what the difference between cut and bulk is. Now, we need to figure out when we need to eat. We have been taught from such a young age that 3 square meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is the way we're supposed to eat. In a sense, it's not bad, but if you look at the amount of insulin spikes we have throughout the day by eating 3 large square meals, you start to see that there's a lot we can do to change that. If you can space your meals out and make it to where you can eat 5 to 7 times a day, you'll actually decrease the amount of insulin spikes you have, and you'll decrease the magnitude as well. When it comes to scheduling your meals, you need to look at what you need throughout the day. Carbs are best in the morning, before you work out, and after you work out. Now, I'm not talking about a ketogenic diet. I'm just saying that the bulk of your carbs should be at those times. That's when they're best utilized. Everyone's needs are going to be a little bit different, but as a general rule, 50 to 55% of your diet should be proteins, 40 to 50% should be carbs, and 10 to 15% should be fats. I'll do a more detailed video on a later date on goal-specific dieting for those of you that want to know more about this topic. So, now I'm going to show you what I do for my cut diet. As you can see here, I've got my foods laid out. I'm going to cook everything and show you what I do as far as meal prep goes. So as you can see here, I've got my proteins laid out. I've got my eggs, my egg whites, my chicken, my lean ground beef, and my salmon. Now I normally do tilapia, but I wanted a little something different this week. Over here, I've got my fats and my carbs, which as you can see is peanut butter, oats, coconut oil, quinoa, spinach, and green beans and blueberries. And then I've got my spices over here to the side. I love hot sauce, I love hot things, so I've got sriracha sauce and homemade ground cayenne pepper. And I've also got basil, Italian seasoning, and burger seasoning. These are all things that I'm going to use. You can use your own. It doesn't have to be these exact same things, so use whatever you like. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this chicken a little more easy to cook. Now, none of us like cooking chicken breasts, so what I'm doing is cutting it up into little pieces, so that way it's a little more manageable. You can cook more of it this way, and even though it only allows you to season it one way, it cooks through a little better, and you can also trim off the nasty bits that you don't want. So these big pieces of fat, you can just cut that off and get rid of it. As you can see here, I've got all my chicken cut up. Now I'm just going to stick it on here, about 5 or 6. I also took the time to kind of do the same thing to our salmon. I've just put it into little smaller pieces. That's just going to make it easier to cook. Alright, so as you can see, I've got 3 meals prepped out for 5 days. I'm only doing 3 meals because the 2 that I'm going to have in addition to this while I'm at work, I'll make in the mornings before I leave. One is oatmeal and one is salad. I don't want either one of those to sit in the fridge all week. I feel like they don't keep very well. So I'll only do 3 at a time and make the other ones in the morning before I leave for work. Alright, so here in the back, I've got green beans. I'm going to pair that with my salmon. And what I'm going to do is measure out 6 ounces of each meat. Alright, so we're finished. I've got my fish and green beans, my chicken and quinoa, my beef and cheese. These are going to be the meals that I prep each week for the next month or so while I'm cutting. And the hope is that since I'm only eating about 2,400 calories a day, is that I'll shed about 15 pounds of body fat, which I'm already about halfway there, so I'm really happy with that. But you guys see what I eat. You don't have to eat exactly like this, but at least this gives you something to think about. Alright, so you guys got to see how I meal prep and what I do for my diet. Hopefully you've learned enough to be able to figure out what you need to do in your specific scenario, be it if you're bulking or if you're cutting. If you need to go back and rewatch the part on BMR, if you need to do a little more research on it, please do so. The more you know, the better off you will be. Also, by prepping out my meals, I know exactly what I'm putting into my body and exactly how much. As you can see, I measured out all of my stuff. I know exactly how many fats, proteins, and carbs I'm getting and at what points during the day I'm getting them. Now, if you're a person that has a big family and you're in charge of cooking the meals, I understand that meal prepping for yourself is kind of selfish in a way, and it's not the best for what everyone in your family needs. So when it comes to doing this, the best thing you can do is just cook healthy. Give your family what they need. Don't give them the processed junk that you see in stores. Get whole foods, get nutritious foods, get nutritionally dense foods, not boxed things. Don't buy pre-made food. That's one of the worst things you can do when it comes to controlling your diet. If you eat well, your family's going to eat well. You need to be an example. Set an example, especially for your kids if you have them. Okay? We have a huge growing issue in America, and that's childhood obesity. It's a completely unnecessary and completely avoidable issue. We don't have to have this. And the best thing you can do to stop it, to keep it from growing, is be an example. Keep your kids eating healthy. Keep them active. If you're eating healthy, they're going to see what you're doing and try to do the same. They look up to you. Keep that in mind. Speaking of kids, anyone that's watching that's still in high school or even in college, I know that meal prepping might be a bit of an issue for you, especially since you have class throughout the day, and pulling out a Tupperware container out of your backpack is probably not the best thing you're going to be able to do. So I advise you go out and buy some nutritionally dense snacks like nuts, jerky, anything along those nature, fresh fruits and vegetables. Those are all going to be good options for you that you can pack around fairly easily and you can eat during class and no one's going to look at you funny for it. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot today. I hope I've given you enough information to start you off. If I haven't answered a question that you specifically had on your mind, please leave in the comments below or tweet at @educatediron and let me know. If I need to do another video on this, I will more than happily do it. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Comment what you want to know about for next week. I'm giving you all what you want to know about. Make sure you give me your input. I'll see you guys next week. Stay strong, stay smart. See ya.